So in this video, we will be discussing about functions in Python. So what is a function? So function is a way of writing code that helps us to make it clean, reusable, understandable, and it helps us to make our work manageable. So function, it's a piece of code that's written separately, and when called, perform a specific task, and it allows us to reuse it again and again without writing it multiple times. So we write it once, and we can call it as many times as possible. So here's a basic function in Python. So what do? We write def, the function name, the brackets, it generally contains the parameter, and the code block. Remember, the Python function has no brackets, it works with indentation. So we have to place some spaces for the compiler to recognize that this is part of the block. So why functions are important? It offers reusability, readability, extra testing, and helps you think small logical parts, which helps us to better understand or better resolve a problem. We have a very basic function in which we are printing a statement. So def is important. That tells us to that we are creating a function. That's a function name. We have a bracket, and after bracket we have a colon. And in the next line, we have given a space, a tab, and after that, we have written a print statement that says, hello, welcome to Python. And after that, we have called this function two times. So what will happen is the interpreter of Python will come to this line and execute this function once and then again. So having done that, we will see print these statement printed twice. So let's run it and see how it works. Yeah, we can see that it has been printed twice. So it is very important to name a function very carefully. We should name it always with meaningfulness, and meaningful names help us to create functions that make sense while debugging or updating the code. So next we can see how function works with parameters and return value. So parameters are like inputs to the function. We can provide it when we are calling it. So for example, here is an example in which we are creating a function add, and we have two parameters, a and b. And what we are doing, we are passing values to it. So here is how we can pass the arguments to the parameters. What's a return statement? So there are like two approaches. So here's an example in which we are doing something in function, we are printing it here, and sometimes we don't want the function's result here. We want it back from where it was called. So for that reason, we need return statement. So whatever we have done in the function, we want it back, we can use the return statement. Here's an example of a function. The function is add. So what we are doing, we are passing two parameters, a and b, and next we are printing all the value, or like the sum of these both values, and that's a print statement. So how are we calling it? First we call with 5 and 7. So what happens, 5 gets copied or like saved in variable a, and 7 gets saved in variable b. We sum them together and we get 12. Next we call the function again with 100 and 250. So 100 will be saved in variable a, and 250 will be saved in variable b, and then we run it, we'll get the answer 350. So that's the point, that we are actually printing the value or printing the answer in the function. Just in case we want the value or the work we have done in the function back from where we called from, we have to use the return statement. So this function says add underscore return, which is just a name that signifies that we are going to return something from it. What we did, we summed a and b and returned the results. So now when we call the function, we send 5 and 7. So 5 is copied or stored in a, and 7 is stored in b. We sum them together, and the answer of this sum is returned. And once this is returned, it returns back, and we are saving it to a variable named result. And after that, we can print it right here, and that's the answer we are getting here. Okay, so yeah, we discussed that the print is very important when we want to print something and we do not want the result back from where we called. and generally return is used to get the value stored or reused or tested. So it's a very good idea to use return statement instead of print. So it's a professional way to do it. So here's another example in which both print and return statements are being used. In this example, we are finding the area in which we are receiving two parameters, length and width, and this is a function that prints the area by just multiplying length and width, and that's it. In the second function, it's our area with return. So what it's doing, it's multiplying and returning the value. It's also saving same those parameters as this one. So now we call the area print. We pass it 10 and 5. We get we get the product of 10 and 5, which is 50, and area 50 is displayed in this function right here. Next is the function that returns. So in this we have called the function with 10 and 5, and we are storing that in a variable a, and after that we are printing that variable a. So one very important thing about the parameters, we can also have a default parameter. So for example, here's an example. So we have a function in which we have already assigned value to that parameter. So this default value means that if a user passes the value, this will be updated, this will be overridden. But if it's not sent by the user, so the function will use the value that's being assigned default to that parameter. So for example, in this case, we are sending a value, and what happens is this values get updated, and the name gets printed, and you can clearly see the output right here. And in case we don't send it any parameters, we say like just run it. So in that case, this will have no value like updated value. It will have the default value and it will print exactly that. So that's it. Next we will discuss how we can use keyword arguments and args. So stay tuned for the next video. Thank you. Bye.